The Titanic. I mean, the name itself is just legendary, isn't it? It's this massive symbol of luxury and ambition, and of course, just unthinkable tragedy. For more than a century, we've been absolutely captivated by its story. So let's dive in and really unpack the anatomy of one of history's most famous disasters.
Right, this is the big question. It's the paradox that's just haunted us for decades. This ship wasn't just big, it was marketed as the absolute pinnacle of safety and engineering. So how in the world did it go down in less than 3 hours? Well, the answer is this chilling combination of its design, some basic physics, and, you guessed it, human error. So first things first, we have to understand why everyone believed it was unsinkable. You gotta remember, back in 1912, the Titanic wasn't just some other ship. No, it was the peak of modern technology. It was basically a floating palace designed to completely conquer the Atlantic.
The sheer scale of this thing was just unheard of. We're talking 269 meters long. That's almost 3 football fields. It was the largest moving object ever built by humans at the time. It had a reinforced double-bottomed hull for extra protection and engines so powerful they could push this beast to over 40 kilometers per hour. So yeah, confidence was sky high.
But the real secret sauce, the key to its unsinkable reputation, was this idea: watertight compartments. The hull was split into 16 separate sections, divided by these huge steel walls called bulkheads. The logic was pretty simple. If you get a hole in 1 or 2 compartments, the doors slam shut, the water is contained, and the ship stays afloat. Simple, right? And the ship's designer had actually done the math. He figured that the Titanic could stay afloat even if the first 4 compartments were totally flooded with water. Sure, it would tilt, it would list to one side, but it was specifically designed to survive what they thought was an absolute worst-case scenario.
And here it is, this single design decision that sealed the ship's fate. Those bulkheads, those supposedly life-saving walls, were kind of like ice cube trays. They were tall, sure, but they didn't go all the way up to the ceiling deck above. So if enough water poured into one compartment, it could just spill right over the top into the next one, and then the next one.
Okay, so a design flaw is one thing, but it takes a lot more than that to sink the Titanic. Let's get to the second part of this tragedy: a whole series of human errors. This is where overconfidence and just plain negligence created the perfect storm for disaster. This wasn't just one mistake. It was a domino effect. Other ships were radioing in warnings about a huge ice field ahead, but those messages just weren't prioritized. The captain kept the speed high, apparently trying to make a new record for crossing the Atlantic. And then the lifeboats. A total disaster waiting to happen. Not enough for everybody. And to top it all off, a chaotic, disorganized evacuation. If you need one detail that just perfectly captures the level of complacency on that ship, it's this. On a pitch-black night in a known ice field, the 2 men in the crow's nest, the eyes of the ship, didn't even have binoculars. By the time they saw the iceberg with their own eyes, it was way, way too late.
Just look at this chart. Honestly, it's one of the most damning pieces of evidence in this whole story. You've got over 2,200 people on board, but lifeboat seats for just over half of them. Even if everything else had gone perfectly during the evacuation, more than 1,000 people were mathematically doomed from the very start.
So we have the design flaw, we have the human errors, but how did the ship actually sink? Let's get into the physics of what really happened in those final, freezing hours of its life.
You know, a lot of people picture the Titanic hitting a big, fluffy, snow-covered iceberg, but the reality was way more brutal. The ship hit an underwater spur of the iceberg, a layer of ancient, compressed blue ice that is literally as hard as solid rock.
The impact didn't actually tear a single giant gash like you see in the movies. Instead, the force of the collision popped the ship's rivets. Those are the metal bolts holding the steel plates of the hull together. The iron they used for these rivets was known to get super brittle in the extreme cold of the Atlantic, so instead of bending, they just snapped, and the hull plates separated like a zipper coming undone.
Okay, remember this number, 4. That was the absolute limit. The ship was built to survive 4 flooded compartments.
But the iceberg breached 5, just one more than the design could handle, and that one extra compartment, well, it made all the difference between staying afloat and total disaster.
And this is exactly where that fatal flaw came back into play. With 5 compartments filling up, the front of the ship, the bow, was pulled down so far that water started spilling over the top of the bulkhead into the 6th compartment, and then the 7th. It was a completely unstoppable chain reaction. The unsinkable ship was officially on a countdown to the bottom of the ocean. The technical failure was swift. It was absolute. But the true weight of this story, the part that still gets to us today, is the human cost of that failure. This chart really tells the story more powerfully than any words ever could. 2/3 of the people on that ship did not survive the night. Over 1,500 lives were lost. It is still one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history during peacetime. And just look at how fast it all happened. From the moment of impact to the moment the ship slipped beneath the waves, it was less than 3 hours. I'm sure it felt like an eternity for the people on board, but that's an astonishingly short amount of time for a vessel of that size to just vanish.
Let's just pause on that number for a second. More than 1,500 men, women, and children. It's a scale of loss that is still so hard to fully comprehend, even all these years later.
A disaster of this magnitude simply couldn't be ignored. The sinking of the Titanic was a brutal, brutal wake-up call for the entire world, and its legacy is written directly into the rules of modern maritime safety. I mean, the difference between then and now is like night and day. Modern ships have double hulls. The joints are welded with high-quality steel, not brittle rivets. Lifeboats are now mandatory for every single person on board. And thanks to things like the International Ice Patrol and 24/7 GPS, we have systems designed specifically to prevent a repeat of that night.
And these weren't just suggestions, they became law. Within 2 years of the disaster, the International Ice Patrol was created to track icebergs in the Atlantic. Lifeboat regulations were completely rewritten, and a 24-hour radio watch became mandatory on all passenger ships. The world learned its lesson, but in the most painful way imaginable. So, in the end, the legacy of the Titanic made the seas infinitely safer for all of us, but it also serves as this permanent, chilling reminder of the dangers of overconfidence and the catastrophic price of ignoring warnings. And it leaves us with one last question to think about. Are we ever truly immune to a disaster born from our own hubris?